Alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in. Alhamdulillah, yesterday we went over the sunan of wudu, and we went over the wajibat and the sunan of wudu, the obligatory actions and the recommended actions of wudu. And we said that all of the entire wudu that we mentioned the day before, the entire wudu is part of the wajib to do it once, except washing the hands, right? So washing the, gargling the mouth, rinsing the nose, the face, the hands up to the elbows, wiping the hair and the ears and the feet. These are all part of the wajibat of wudu, and it is wajib to wash them at least once. Right? It is wajib to wash them at least once. And we also mentioned, or we said that before making wudu, you have to have the niyyah, the intention, and that is a must, that is a fard. Actually, it is a shart, which is even stronger than a fard. It's something that must happen before you set out to make the wudu. And we mentioned that the sunan acts of wudu are washing 3 times. So any part that is washed, you wash it 3 times. Also washing the hands before the wudu, or the first thing that you wash is washing the 2 hands 3 times. We mentioned from the sunan actions of wudu is washing the right before the left, and also the dua after the wudu is finished. And we also mentioned from the makruhat, the things that are hated, or the things that are disliked when making wudu, is wasting water, right? From the makruhat is wasting water when making wudu. Today, inshallah, we will start the chapter of as-siwak, bab as-siwak. And the author, Ibn Qudama rahimahumullah, he puts the sunan of siwak, or the recommended times to do the siwak, in this chapter. He says rahimahullah, قال ويسن السواك عند تغير الفم وعند القيام من النوم وعند الصلاة لقول رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم لولا أشق على أمتي لأمرتهم بالسواك عند كل صلاة ويستحب في سائر الأوقات إلا للصائم بعد الزوال. So he says that it is recommended to clean the teeth. وَيَسُنُّ السِّوَاكُ عِنْدَ تَغَيِّرِ الْفَمِ. And then he starts by listing down the different times. Number 1, عِنْدَ تَغَيِّرِ الْفَمِ, when the odor of your mouth has changed. And of course, when the odor of your mouth has changed, it is sunnah to clean it, because it can affect yourself and it can affect others, right? And Islam, it is yahuthu, and he is encouraged in Islam all of the time to be clean, right? Whether it's your mouth or your body, or wherever you are, we're always encouraged to be clean and to be presentable when we're dealing with people. And we find that the Prophet ﷺ would always use the siwak, and would always be busy with cleaning himself and making sure he is in a very presentable, good, good smelling, good, neat looking person at all of the times. So number 1, in the taghayyir al-fam, when the odor of your mouth changes. Number 2, وَإِنْدَ الْقِيَامِ مِنَ النَّوْمِ, and when you raise from your sleep. So when you rise from your sleep, when you wake up, it is sunnah to do the siwak. Number 3, وَإِنَّ الصَّلَاةِ, and at the time of prayer. And when he says at the time of prayer, what is meant here is just before salah, or also when you're making wudu before your salah. So when you're making wudu and you're doing madmada, when you're rinsing your mouth, at that time you do the siwak as well. And this is what is narrated from the scholars and from the Prophet ﷺ. And the dalil for this is the saying of the Prophet ﷺ, لولا أن أشق على أمتي لأمرتهم بالسواك عند كل صلاة. If it has not been too much of a burdensome for my ummah, for my nation, I would have commanded them to clean their teeth before every prayer, before every salah. وَيُسْتَحَبُّ فِي سَائِرِ الْأَوْقَاتِ. And it is recommended at all times. It is recommended at all times. So we have two types of recommendations here, right? The scholars have mentioned there are two types. Number one is the recommendation that is that is general. So it's generally recommended for you to have a clean mouth, for you to be using the siwak, for you to have a clean smell coming from yourself, generally, right? And then in these particular times, which is narrated that the Prophet ﷺ, it is accurate. It's even more recommended during these times that we make sure that we use the siwak in these times, and that is when the odor of your mouth changes, and when you get up from sleeping, and when you are going to pray. And then there is one time which it is makruh for someone to do the siwak, and it is إِلَّا لِلصَّائِمِ بَعْدَ الزَّوَالِ, except for the person that is fasting after zawal. And zawal is just before the time of dhuhr. And the reason for this is the scholars have mentioned the Prophet ﷺ said in an authentic hadith narrated in Sahih al-Bukhari, وَخُلُوفُ فَمِّ الصَّائِمِ أَطْيَبُ عِنْدَ اللَّهِ من ريح المسك. And the smell of the fasting person's mouth is better in the sight of Allah than the smell of musk, right? Than the smell of musk. And they said that usually the smell of your mouth changes around this time, after this time. So after the midday, right, after dhuhr, that is when usually the smell of the mouth starts to, or the fasting of the person starts to affect his mouth. They also have a hadith from the Prophet ﷺ indicating this, but the hadith it has some weakness to it. And they also have to prove for this point some actions of some of the Sahaba. They would stop using the siwak when they're fasting after the time of zawal, which is the time of dhuhr, when the sun is at its peak at noon time, when there is no shadow. When there is no shadow when you go outside, that is the time of zawal, or zenith in English. Now, one point to note before we conclude, or before we finish, we mentioned this chapter, and it's called Bab al-Siwak, and we mentioned the times of using the siwak, the miswak. Now, if a person does not have a miswak, then he can use the toothstick or a toothbrush, a regular toothbrush with toothpaste. That is also recommended, right? Of course, the Prophet ﷺ, he had the siwak, and that was available, and that was readily available in his time. And the scholars also have mentioned that the siwak itself has benefits, right? And when you use a fresh siwak, you can feel it. Some of them actually have like a burning sensation when you put it in your mouth and when you use it, and you feel it like it's almost like it's a different type of toothpaste or a liquid, right? Especially when you use the fresh siwak and you bite it and you break it brand new, right? So it does have some benefits as well, the actual siwak. However, if you're not able to get the siwak, for example, you're living in the West, and every shop, when you're living in a place like Saudi Arabia, or you're living in a place in the Middle East, like in the Middle East, every corner store you go to, they're selling the siwak, right? It's easy for you to get, right? Every masjid you go to, there's someone selling the siwak outside, right? It's very easy, right? But for us, if it's not available to you, if you don't have the siwak and you have a toothbrush, then the toothbrush is the second, best thing, right? To use a toothbrush and use toothpaste, if necessary, to clean your teeth, because the whole intention behind it is to remove the odor from your mouth, so that your mouth smells fresh, and you have a fresh odor when you're dealing with others, right? That is the intent. That is the maqsood of using the siwak. And if you're able to, reach that maqsad by other means, and if you're not able to use the exact siwak or the exact type of siwak that the Prophet ﷺ used, then the scholars have said that you can use whatever is available for you, and that will be sufficient, insha'Allah ta'ala. Wa sallallahu ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in.